So today we're going to be making this classic one here, just red and white. I am going to be using yarn, just acrylic yarn that I found at my local yarn shop. And I've got some scrap white here. You'll also need a pair of 3mm needles and a pair of 4mm double pointed needles. I'm just going to keep them in their pack just to make it a bit easier for me when I'm working, so the needles just aren't everywhere. You also need some scissors just to cut your yarn. You'll need a removable stitch marker just to mark your beginning of round, and a yarn needle to weave in your ends. The other thing I should mention as well is I'm actually going to be double stitching little initials into each of these because I'm going to make these as gifts. So I'm going to be doing that in this video as well, and it's just a duplicate stitch that I use. So to begin, I am going to cast on my stitches onto my 3.5mm needles here. I'm going to cast on 31 stitches. You can use any cast on you prefer. I've just used the long tail cast on. It's just what I use for everything, and it's just a habit by now. Even if a cast on calls for something else, I'll use this. So I've cast on 31 stitches here. What I'm going to do now is turn my needle like this, and I'm going to actually take 3 stitches off the edge here, and I'm just going to slip them off the needle just like that, and then pull at that, and that is going to be your loop at the neck so that you can hang it as an ornament. So now we have 28 stitches left on the needle. I'm going to distribute the stitches evenly onto the rest of my 3.5mm needles. So I'm going to, on the first needle, distribute 6 stitches, or transfer 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The next needle, I am going to transfer 8 stitches. And then my next needle, I'm going to transfer 6 stitches again. And these stitches will be your front, back and sleeves of your tiny sweater. So that is what it will look like. And you've got your loop there. So now we're going to join it and work in the round. So I'm going to grab my last needle here and make sure my stitches don't twist, and join to work in the round. So I'm going to begin working 1 by 1 rib. On each needle. Okay, this is going to get fiddly as well. I don't love working with double pointed needles, but I love these little sweaters, so I am going to endure this. Okay. So I've worked rib on my first needle. I'm going to do it on my second needle. So now I've worked my first round, and you can see we're back at the loop where we begun. With that stitch marker, you can use that to actually mark your beginning of round if that will help you. I will pop it in just to give myself a little reminder that this is the beginning of rounds. But what you want to do is actually work in 1 by 1 rib for 4 rounds. So I'm just going to repeat that again and do the same thing. So I've worked the 4 rows now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to snip a tail. I'm going to actually change colors to my red and also change needles. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so I've got my red yarn now, and I'm going to swap to my 4mm needles here, my 4mm double pointed needles, and I'm going to, for this first round, knit my stitches. This is going to be fiddly still, so So now for round 2, I am going to work my increases, and these will be Raglan increases, which is these parts here. We are going to increase along each of those 4 points. So for this first needle, we are going to knit one. I'm just going to pull that tighter. And then we are going to make one left leaning increase. So I am going to pick up that red stitch from front to back and knit through the back loop. Like that. Then I'm going to knit until I have 1 stitch remaining here on this same needle. And then I'm going to make a right leaning increase. So I pick up from back to front, and then I'm just going to move this needle out of the way so you can see better, like that. And then I'm going to knit through the front loop here. You can see why I don't love knitting with double pointed needles. It gets very fiddly, but yeah. And just make sure I pick up the whole stitch, that. And then I'll knit that last stitch on the needle. And then I'm going to do the same to the next 3 needles after, until I'm back again at my beginning of round. So I'm going to knit one, make 1 left leaning increase, knit until I have 1 stitch remaining, and then make a right leaning increase. Like that. And then repeat again. So now I've completed that round. The next round I'm just going to knit all the stitches again on all 4 needles until I am back at the beginning here, and that's your repeat. You have 14 stitches on your first needle here and your third needle, and you have 16 stitches on your second needle and your fourth needle. So now we're going to put the stitches on the first needle and the third needle on hold. So I'm just going to use a little bit of scrap yarn I have here and just place them on hold. And these are going to be the sleeves that we pick up later to work. So now we are going to join all our stitches in the round and continue working the body. So I'm just going to move these out of the way. So here, your working yarn is here. I am going to cast on 1, 2, 3 stitches, just using the backwards loop method. And then I'm going to join with these stitches on this needle here. So I'm just going to use a third needle to do that. Oops. Continue working until you reach here, and then we're going to cast on those same 3 stitches again. So when you join the body, it doesn't really matter how many stitches you have on each needle. You can just distribute it so that it is even or just comfortable, so that everything is not everywhere. So here I'm actually going to join these now, but I'm going to cast on 3 stitches first. So I'm going to cast on 1, 2, 3, and then I'm just going to use the needles I have here, and I'm just going to join them around. Actually, I'll just move these out of the way and continue joining this around. So I personally like to have only 3 stitches for double pointed needles and then use a 4th one to go around. I find like 4 too many. But if you prefer 4, you can definitely continue working with 4 stitches. So I'm going to continue knitting until I reach up to here. So this is where we cast on our 3 stitches. So this point here is going to be our beginning of round. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to place a stitch marker. I'm just going to place a stitch marker like that, and then continue working around and I work for an extra 10 rows counting from the underarm. So once you've worked your body down, we're now going to be working on the ribbing at the bottom here. So I'm just going to do it the same as the neck, and I'm going to switch to my 3.5mm needles and with my white coloured yarn, and I'm going to do 1 by 1 rib. And I'm going to do this for 4 rounds. And I am going to cut the red yarn because I won't need that here for the body anymore. You could probably do that before you begin as well. I just remembered right now. And then continue that around. So just as like another little thing with working with double pointed needles, I prefer to end a stitch on a purl stitch at the end of a needle, and then if I'm starting a new needle and picking and using that stitch, I like it to be a knit. I just find it a lot easier and less fiddly. That's just a thing with me. I don't really know if anyone else does that, but yeah, that's just a little tip. If you're finding it hard to join your needles, I find it easier just to make sure to start with a knit stitch. Once you've worked your hem, we're going to bind off. I personally like to bind off in a tubular bind off. That I think is nice for 1 by 1 rib, which you can sort of see here. It has like a nice, it just makes it look like it's continued on, but you can really bind off however you want. You can use like a stretchy bind off or just a basic bind off. It's completely up to you. This will be a quick sort of a demonstration on how to bind off in tubular bind off. So for the first stitch, I am going to put my needle in purlwise. This is going to get quite fiddly here because you've got needles everywhere. So I'm going to put it in the first stitch there purlwise, and then I'm going to begin the pattern. So the pattern now is going to be, I'm going to get this needle down like that, is you want to take your needle from back to front and put it between the 2 stitches. So you can see I'm not really going through either one of these stitches, but you want to put it between the first 2 stitches like that. And then we're going to go knitwise through this second stitch, and then we are going to slip this first stitch knitwise off the needle like that, and then I'm going to put the needle purlwise through the new second stitch. So now that's the first stitch and that's the second stitch. I'm going to put it through like that. And now I'm going to slip this first stitch off purlwise because it was a purl stitch, so I'm going to slip it off purlwise. So now we're going to repeat our pattern and take our needle from back to front and put it between stitches. Put it in knitwise, slip that first stitch off, put it through purlwise on the second stitch, and continue that. Oh, and then purl that first stitch off. And then continue that pattern until the end of the round. So when it comes time to doing it onto the next needle, I actually just, if I have one stitch left on my needle, I'm just going to transfer it to the next needle that I'm going to work my bind off on, just like that. So I'm up to putting my stitch purlwise through that second stitch, and now I'm going to slip that next stitch off, and then just keep doing that. So now we are going to work the sleeves, and the sleeves are pretty much the same as working the body in the round. You can see I've done one here already. So to pick up for the sleeves, I am just going to transfer these stitches first onto my needle. These ones don't have to be evenly distributed either. You can just transfer them across onto your 4mm needles. So I'm just going to take out that was holding it. And then you want to pick up the stitches along your underarm here. So we cast on 3, but I pick up about 4 stitches to account for sort of the underarm holes, or to avoid underarm holes, I should say. So I'm going to begin sort of picking up along the edge here. I should say I'm not really an expert in picking up the stitches. If there are holes at the end, I usually will just use my tail here to fix it. So I'm going to pick up 1, 2, 3, 4. So along here, you can sort of see these 2 little stitches. What I'm going to do is pick up and knit those together. And then I'm going to place a marker. And then I'm going to knit in the round. So I knit this for about 10 rows, counting from the underarm here. So I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So once you've completed your sleeve, you can work the cuff just the same as you did the hem. I'm just going to transfer colors, and I probably should have said earlier, but you obviously don't have to change colors or anything. You can just keep the same color for the entire sweater if you prefer that, but you will still have to change needle size. So I'm switching to my 3.25 millimeter needles here. And I'll just show you guys quickly, because right now my dog in the background hasn't been fed her dinner, so she's having a bit of a whinge. So your stitches don't need to be distributed evenly either for this. So you can see the underarm here, that pickup was actually okay, maybe a little bit sort of there. I can use the tail to make that a bit neater, but I'm quite happy with that. So that is the finished sweater, and it is so freaking cute, and there is the loop so you can hang it up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the duplicate stitch on. I'm going to make this part the front. For me, the loop is on the left side here, but if you want the loop to be like on this side, then you can make this the front because it's pretty much reversible. But I'm going to make this side the front, and I'm going to duplicate stitch in a letter because I'm going to be giving these away as gifts, so I want it to have the letter for them on there. So I'm actually going to work my duplicate stitch in a green thread here, and the letters I am actually taking from another designer from another website. I will link it to you guys below. It's actually for a Christmas stocking, which is really cute, so I'm going to use the letters that she has on that and put it onto here.